Hey guys, welcome to tonight's live. And I just realized that I forgot something. I'm just going to grab it as I am talking to you guys. It's somewhere right here. Just let me bring over the bag for a minute. I just realized that I was at the nail salon. Here, I can turn my camera back on earlier, and I didn't put my rings back on. And I thought I put them in the side pocket. So anyway, how are you guys all doing tonight? How's everybody doing? There they are. I can feel them now. I always feel weird if my rings aren't on. There we go. We're good. We're good now. They had my hands in like acetone, so I took them off. But anyway, sorry about that, guys. Didn't even start the live. And we were already having to grab something. So I'm gonna turn my fan on. If it is too loud, just let me know and I can turn it off. I'll just speak a little louder as well. So welcome on in. The boss contacted you? Oh man. Say, isn't it past working hours? Isn't it past working hours? So I got my nails redone. They're nice and chocolatey color. I went to this new little salon down the road. And I'm glad I went, even though I've been not wanting to go for the last couple of weeks. It's always good to get out and do something for yourself. So if you guys missed the live earlier today, we did cover Delphi. We went over the rest of the documents that came out on the 13th over the defense. So we did the prosecution's rebuttal, like, what was it, 2 lives ago? And then we finished all of the documents today on the live. So if you missed that, you might want to go back and check it out so you guys will be able to experience the whole entire novel that we read. Oh, Jan, I didn't know if it was the boss or if it was your husband. At first, when you said the boss, I was just like laughing in my head, you know. Right, Cheryl, you're exactly right. That's how I see it. That's how I see things too. What's that? Like, there's a saying. I don't even know the saying, but all I know is I'm hitting that age this year. Like, I don't know how old you guys were, if you've hit that age yet, but there's an age that you hit, and it's a beautiful age. And it's the age of you don't have time. Like, you only have time for the people that want to be involved with you. And I hit that age, like, where I can't just, run around and nobody in particular. I'm just saying, and life in general. I'm just like, I just don't have time. I'm too, I said it the other day. I'm like, I'm too busy and too something else, like too old and too busy or something to like even care. Cause I'm growing up. That's what it is, Alicia. Yes. It's stepping stones. It hit me way before 38, but it really hit me. It's hit me at 38. I can feel it. But it's just, just growing and stuff. Just growing. That's all it is. But and I enjoy the growth. I wish, and I know a lot of people say this in their 30s, that they wish they had the wisdom they had in their 30s and their 20s, and I really do. I wish I had this wisdom that I have now. I wouldn't have changed anything. I just wish I would have known a little more than what I did. So welcome everybody in, letting some people get in. I know I've been coming live earlier or later in the evenings, the last few evenings. So sorry about that. We'll be back on our 8:15 regular scheduled broadcasting. And there's just been a lot of things that have been happening in true crime to where I feel like we've had to do like 2 a day to get kind of caught up, because I wanted to make sure we read all of those documents for the Delphi case. And I gave that, the needed attention that it needed. And then if anything else comes up, of course, we're going to cover it on the channel. And we may, before trial, if nothing comes out, if, everyone stays tight-lipped from here on out, which I don't know what's going to happen. They may not. But if they do, we'll always go back and look at the case again before trial comes up, because we have to know all the details. But I am hoping that, we'll be getting paperwork and stuff at least until trial. And I think we will. Hey, Glowbug. We're all going to say hi to you now that you said you're You're just listening. Kayleen said I have 10 years in. Yeah. Aw. Cheryl's 61, she said. My mom would have been, I think she would have been 69. Wait, I'm 38. I don't know. She was 33 when she had me. She would have been like 68, 69, I think. I always try to I always compare people with my mom's age, because and she had the most wisdom. She was so smart. She was so smart. She was a smart woman. She used to say the most craziest things, and it was always true. Like, I don't know. We lived by this lady. I'll tell you a quick story. We lived by this lady, and my mom was very, very, she was like a saint, like an angel on earth. And the next door neighbor, she liked to go to the bars and hang out with people, like men. And she was in her late 60s doing this, like one night stands and stuff. And my mom looked at her one day because she was like, this lady was telling my mom that she should go out with her to the bar. My mom has never been my mom don't go to bars. She hadn't been to a bar since she was in her 20s or something. And my mom was like, I don't pay men for my drinks. And when she said that, I was like, get her, mom. I don't know. Just made me proud of my mom. You're either with me or you're not. Thank you. That's exactly right. Exactly. Yep. Oh, Jesus loves me. I love that name. I think I told you that before. New here, but watch and listen a lot. Oh, well, join the chat. We'd love to have you. It's going to be a relaxing live tonight. We're going to, try to make it relaxing. I didn't plan on doing a brand new Nancy live over Suzanne Morphew, but she came out with one. I knew that she would, but I was waiting, and she did. So if you guys wouldn't mind just taking a second to hit the like button, it does help the channel. I'm going to put the channel membership in the chat if anyone wants to join. If you're watching on replay, #replay. Also, if you're new here, my name's Tanya or TitaniumBuilt. You can call me either or. I always tend to forget to call or tell you guys my name. And it's not on the screen anymore. So I always tend to forget. But that's okay. You guys aren't here to know my name anyway, are you? You're here to know about the case. But so Suzanne Morphew is one of the cases that we've been covering on the channel. We actually were just started covering it. It was a story. It was a case I wanted to cover. And we were started covering it yesterday. And then it's just news broke yesterday, and it's just kind of taken off from there. So she went missing. Suzanne, I keep calling her Susan. Why do I keep doing that? Suzanne. I don't know why I'm calling her Susan. I think it's because I used to work with a lady named Susan. So if I do that, just yell at me. Suzanne. I know that's why I'm calling her Susan. Suzanne Morphew went missing Mother's Day after a bike ride. Well, she went on a bike ride, according to her husband, in 2020. So Mother's Day 2020, she goes out for a bike ride. Her daughters are out camping for the weekend, and she doesn't come back. So everybody's that's been following this case for the last few years, there's not been a whole lot that's come out other than they arrested Barry, and then the prosecutors dropped the charges, and they said it's because they were waiting until they, had a body kind of to go on. They wanted more evidence. So now that they found her, that's the new biggest news. They found her. So now that they found her, I'm anticipating charges on Barry, but you know how true crime is. It could be a completely different person, or a completely different thing. Barry could still, of course, be involved, but and I do believe he is involved. But this is him and his daughters. Oh, is there pictures here? Oh, yeah, there's Suzanne right there. I don't know why I call her Suzanne. And I don't know what kind of cancer she had, but she did have cancer. If you guys know in the chat, let me know what kind of cancer she had, because I can't remember. But it says investigators found the remains of a Colorado woman who went for a bike ride on Mother's Day 2020 and never returned, but authorities said they still don't have answers in the case. I guess that they were able to tell that it was Suzanne by the port, her cancer port, and they did dental. That's what we kind of thought, the dental part. Yeah, she had cancer. Yeah. I just can't remember what kind of cancer she had. That I can't remember. Maybe it'll say in one of these. Um, I've listened to the things and I read this, but maybe it'll say in one of these. Actually, let me look it up because I don't think it did. I always watch this stuff before we go live. Let's see. Oh wait, she overcame Hodgkin's lymphoma. Wow. She overcame. That's so, man. I didn't know if she was like in remission or if she had it still. Wow. The discovery of Suzanne Morphew's remains was announced Wednesday as authorities were pursuing a different case. So I'm wondering what case they were pursuing and if this case had anything to do with Barry. Like, it's very strange. It's the latest twist in a mystery that saw prosecutors charge her husband with M and then drop the charges. Barry Morphew has filed a $15 million lawsuit against county officials. If I was him, I'd be telling my lawyer, can you make that lawsuit go away for them? Colorado Bureau of Investigations agents found the remains of the 49-year-old mother of 2 daughters while searching Friday in the area of Moffett. This is about 40 miles, 65 kilometers south of Salida area, where Suzanne Morphew was reported missing. Investigators declined to release the exact location and state of the remains. I think that we can all say that the remains were probably just skeletal remains at this point, 3 years, I would say. She had it twice. We're saying, oh. Oh, man. Brandywine, yeah. It's just like we're waiting, and I hadn't heard anything on this case in so long. I was getting ready to leave the house. We were going to go run errands, and I was like, whoa, what, huh? Like, I was in shock. I was in shock that they found her. I thought for sure he just disposed of her and got rid of her. Like, I don't know. Because it was like, I mean, after the 1 year, 2 years, it says Barry Morphew had been charged with murder and other crimes in her presumed death, but prosecutors dropped their case against him last year just as he was about to go on trial. While this case has garnered attention from around the world, it has touched our community and the sheriff's office deeply. Let me see how you pronounce this. I always forget how you pronounce their county. Chaffee County Sheriff John Spezzi said Wednesday, "We have never stopped our investigation and will continue to follow all leads in pursuit of justice for Suzanne." The sheriff said, "We are left with many more questions than answer," and he declined to be interviewed or to hold a news conference. District Attorney Ann Kelly, who was not involved in the criminal case, but whose jurisdiction covers the area where Morphew's body was found, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. I wonder if they're ever going to do a press conference. They should. I mean, at least say that they found her. That's like just a good thing to do for her. Like, you know what I mean? For her memory, I would feel like. Barry Morphew's attorney said in a Wednesday statement that he and his daughters were in grief. They had faith that their wife and mom would walk back into their lives again. The news is heartbreaking. Like, I'm sorry, but if my mom was gone for 3 days, let alone 3 years, I'd have been like, that lady ain't coming back. Like, I'm sorry. How did they really thought? Well, we all know Barry, what he thought. Like, I mean, that's so heartbreaking. Because that's me. I just know that if my mom walked out the door and she was missing and gone for 3 days over, like, you know, I mean, over a certain amount of time, I would be like, okay, she's not coming back. Like, there's something, you know what I mean? Nothing keeps a mom from their kids like that. That's so crazy. From what we know, Barry is innocent as he was from day one. We hope the authorities will quickly admit their wrongful prosecution of Barry, an innocent man, to treat the Morphews like the victims they are and charge the persons responsible for Suzanne's killing. The arrest affidavit laying out investigators' case against Barry Morphew said his wife insisted on leaving him and he and that he changed his statements as evidence in the case developed. Morphew, an avid hunter, did not initially tell investigators that he went out of his way as he left for work on Mother's Day, driving towards the place where his wife's bicycle helmet was eventually found. Later, he said he went that way because he had seen an elk across the road, according to the affidavit. Prosecutors dropped the charges after they were barred by a judge from calling most of their key witnesses for repeatedly failing to follow rules for turning over evidence in his favor. That included DNA from an unknown male linked to SA cases in other states, which was found in Suzanne Morphew's SUV, raising the possibility of another suspect being involved. At the time, prosecutors said they wanted more time to find Suzanne Morphew's body. Barry Morphew's lawyers announced in April that they had filed a complaint asking that the prosecutors be disciplined for allegedly and intentionally withholding evidence in the case. Barry Morphew filed a $15 million lawsuit in May against prosecutors and investigators, accusing them of violating his constitutional rights. The charges against Morphew was dismissed without prejudice, leaving the door open should prosecutors later decide to pursue a case against him again. Really? They didn't even have gloves when they touched the bike? Wow. Hey, Aries, welcome in. Yeah, I feel bad for her kids. They look just like her. Her daughters look just like her. I just don't know how to get like to that. I guess you'd have that mindset because you would be like hoping and praying that's what's going to happen. But to me, I would just be like, no, where's my mama? And I don't know. I would be like Little Miss Investigator, but that's just me because I just know how I would, I don't even know how I would feel if my mom was missing. That would be I couldn't even imagine that. That's terrible to even like have to think that. But I do have a couple videos that will get us, if you're unfamiliar with this case, it'll get you kind of caught up with, not completely caught up because there's so many twists and turns, but it'll get you kind of caught up to the new Nancy Grace video that she came out with. I always listen to the podcast version, so I always say podcast on the live. So let me share this one with you here. And it's going to be Brian Enton. He's filling in for Elizabeth Vargas.
And breaking news tonight, the verdict watch is on in the murder case of popular Hollywood sex therapist Amy. Good evening, I'm Brian Enton. Elizabeth is off tonight. Right now, a jury near Hollywood is deciding the fate of a man accused of murdering a popular therapist. Amy Harwick died in 2020 after falling off her bedroom balcony. A California jury is now deciding whether her ex-boyfriend, Gareth Pershouse, threw her off that balcony. We're watching it all very, very closely. Remember, it's LA time, so it's still early there. We'll let you know right away if the jury reaches a verdict. But first, a cold case in Colorado has become an active murder investigation as the remains of a missing mom are found 3 years after she disappeared. Agents with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation found the remains of 49-year-old Suzanne Morphew while pursuing a different case. The remains were located about 40 miles south of where Morphew was reported missing after she didn't return from a Mother's Day bike ride. That's where we find News Nation's Brooke Schaefer right now. Brooke, tell us, how is the community reacting to this news?
Well, Brian, I think there's definitely shock. I think for some people, there's even a sense of relief, if you will. For 3.5 years, they have really been waiting for answers. Just behind me, over my shoulder here, you can see a memorial set up outside of a salon here in Salida, Colorado. They've even made some T-shirts here. They say, "Justice for Suzanne." The community here really waiting for answers, again, since March of 2020, when this mom of two, she went for a bike ride and never came home. So the news that investigators found her remains not far from Salida, about 40 miles from her home, and identified them yesterday, that news somewhat overwhelming for some of the people who live here.
Because obviously we're a small town and everybody follows this case and has followed this case since day one. It was just a shocking feeling. It was overwhelming.
Just like, wow, like Thank God, though, but just wow.
Now, Suzanne's brother had once said at the time of her disappearance that not finding her body would really be the worst thing. So the community here in Salida, I think, grateful in a sense for some closure for this family, even though investigators admit that at this point, they still have, quote, much more questions than answers. Brian?
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com.
I'm just going to go into the second video here because it's kind of like goes back to back in a way. So thank you so much, Jan, for the memberships. It's so sweet. Thank you so much. And welcome in, everybody. I about turned on my gifts because I looked over and it's like, you could be a lucky recipient of a TitaniumBuilt membership with access to exclusive perks. And I was about to hit allow gifts. I'm like, wait, hold on a second. I don't want to get, that'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it? If I got gifted a membership on my own channel, that'd be pretty cool though.
Situation now that Suzanne's body has been found, because let's not forget that her husband, Barry, was once arrested for her murder, but then the prosecution backed up and didn't actually end up going to trial on it. Do you think this changes things? I mean, if you're the husband right now, should you be anticipating the charges again?
Well, we have to remember why those charges were dropped. Back in the day, the prosecutors engaged in quote unquote misconduct. They didn't turn over evidence to the defense, evidence of even DNA of a third party that may have been implicated here. Now, remember, they were prepared to go to trial even without a body. You and I both know you can prosecute somebody without a body. You can even get a conviction. It's not so easy. So now that they have the body and potentially evidence to determine who did this to her, and we don't know the remains, what condition they're in or what they might tell us, but it's definitely a point for the prosecution. I can't tell you right now if that means that they're going to recharge and go after Barry Morphew. They dismissed that charge without prejudice, meaning they could refile charges against him. But this is definitely something that prosecutors are going to be looking at because this is another step of the puzzle, giving them an indication of what might happen to her.
Yeah, and police are being so careful right now, not really releasing any information about the condition of the body. They're not even saying where they found the body exactly. We just know the general area. But what I'm wondering is, can they go back to his cell phone records now, try to put him near that area? Even though it's been 3 years, they can still figure things out with the remains in terms of possibly coming up with the cause of death.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because this is not like he was found not guilty. This is not like double jeopardy. They can pursue a case against him. And we remember at the time, one of the pieces of evidence was that he gave conflicting statements to law enforcement. There was also motive, that the idea that both of them were having, both him and Suzanne were having affairs, that she seemed to be done with the relationship. None of that goes away. That's all there. So all that the prosecution might have now is more evidence. But does it actually link back to Barry? And we know he has filed a lawsuit of saying malicious prosecution, that the government improperly went after him, that he was always innocent. That lawsuit's still going on. And so it'll be interesting to see if he's recharged. And if, listen, prosecutors have to be careful because they have this ongoing case. They better be sure Barry's their guy.
And it's interesting, in the statement that Barry's attorney put out, he said that the police didn't even notify Barry that the remains were found, which made me kind of wonder, like, wow, it's still a volatile relationship there. And it's interesting you bring up double jeopardy because people were confused on Twitter. Since he didn't go to trial the first time, double jeopardy doesn't apply here.
Yeah, the case was dropped. It's not like a jury decided it. It's not like a judge did. Just because the charges were dropped, again, without prejudice means they could always be refiled. The fact that they didn't tell him signifies to me they may still think he's a suspect and they didn't want to tell him immediately. They're still pursuing what his role might be in the case.
Interesting. We'll watch it closely. Thanks for coming on with us, Jesse. Stick with us, Jesse, because if we get an Amy Harwick verdict, by the way, we want you to be on standby. It could happen over the next hour.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find.
I was trying to type in the chat, but I want to see I want to know what they got. Like, of course I don't want to see, Suzanne or anything, but I want to see what they have other than like what they had prior to finding her. And then now what they're going to have now that they found her. But, I thought that I heard that she was like separated, but I'm trying to find more information on that. Like, not that she was like buried like that, but like that maybe like animals had maybe dispersed her. It says here that Her bones were scattered in a remote desert field of sagebrush and natural grasses. It appears to have been buried in a shallow grave, which showed evidence of animal activity. Dental records in Morphew's cancer report made identification possible. So, oh, man, I wonder what a cancer report looks like. I don't know if I should look that up. Is it going to give me nightmares? I mean, I don't like medical stuff. Do you know what I mean? I get like wheezy. Will that make me wheezy? I can, if it's on me, I can do it. I just can't do other people. Like I can't do like a scratch on somebody else. I'm like, I get wheezy. Like, but myself I can. I mean, let me see if I can look one up. Like because I'm wondering, is it like, because I had a tube put in, like to pump my lung up. I'm wondering if it's the kind of like a scarring like that. Oh, it's like the one up here. Okay, so wait. Back it up. Okay. So if they found her by her cancer port, it would have still had to have been attached, but she didn't have the cancer anymore, right? So it would have been not attached. So it would have been a scar, but they wouldn't have had any flesh. So now I'm confused on the cancer port part. If anyone can explain that to me, let me know. Chemo port is under the skin and the chest wall. Thank you, Yolanda. RN, look at that. Ask and you shall receive. Thank you so much, because that helps. Because I feel bad. I don't want to be like, this couldn't have been if it is. So yeah, thank you. Her body was buried, yeah. But I'm thinking even with even buried, I would think you would be like still skeletal at that point. But yeah, I looked it up. Okay, so that doesn't bother me. I thought that it was like going to be like a hole or something, like where you could see through, because I just get wheezy. Y'all should see me. It's pretty funny. It's not really, but it is. It is funny, actually, because of all the, the stuff that I've had. I have a prosthetic eye. I've got metal everywhere, but seeing someone else hurt, I can't do it. I'm one of those people. I'm not one of those. That's why I wouldn't have made a good nurse. I wouldn't have. You're supposed to run towards people that are hurt, not run away. Don't lie to y'all. I'm like, oh, they're hurt. I'm running away. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I really do. I get wheezy. It's a device. It doesn't burn. Yeah. So it probably just doesn't even, you probably don't even can't tell that it's there after a while. Are there bears in Colorado? I would say so. Banterline. I would say that there are. For sure. So I am going to play Nancy. Like I said, she's going to go over where, she was found. I put it under the members only. I did a members only post, but I was in the nail salon earlier. It's the first 5 minutes of the video. And she's like, can you cut Joseph or Joey, or she calls him something like that. Talking about Joseph Scott Morgan. She's like, can you cut his mic? And then he's still talking. And she's like, he is still talking. Can you please cut his mic now? She was on one. She's been waiting for this news. So we're going to go ahead and play Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. And let me get that up for us. The right one. The video version of that, actually. Let me see where we're at here. I'll just put it on here and then I'll move it over. All right. If you guys wouldn't mind just taking a second to hit the like button, it really does help the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love to have you. We are so close to hitting 12,000 Titans on this channel, guys. That's amazing. I can't even believe it. We are literally like 8 away or something. So close. If you'd like to subscribe, we'd love to have you. So we're going to go ahead and play Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. She's going to go over the Suzanne Morphew case and her body being found after over 3 years. So I listened to this earlier and it was really good. Oops, sorry guys. I meant to not turn that up so loud. Let me turn it up slowly. Sorry guys.
Breaking now. In the last hours, the remains of Suzanne Morphew have been found. No question. The remains are Suzanne Morphew. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. Thank you for being with us here at Fox Nation and Sirius XM 111. Listen.
The Colorado Bureau of Investigation won't say the exact location where they found Suzanne's remains last Friday, only that it is near Moffett. You're looking at an aerial view of that part of Saguache County. Investigators were on site for a different case when they came across Suzanne's remains, positively identified on Wednesday by the El Paso County coroner.
The FBI, the CBI, the sheriff's department the sheriff especially department has always said, we need her body to finish this case out. My thing is you've got her body. Let's finish this case.
That's right. You've got her body. Let's finish this case. You're hearing our friends at KUSA 9. Now take a listen to Fox 31.
It was certainly an emotional day here in Salida. Many hoping this is the beginning of closure they've been waiting for more than 3 years for now. We did just receive a statement from the Morphew family. We'll get to that momentarily. But first, to those new developments from today. According to the district attorney's office, Morphew's body was found near the town of Moffett by investigators who were working on a completely different case than this one. Now, those remains were not confirmed to be Morphew's until today. Now, Moffett is in Saguache County, about 40 miles south of where Morphew was last seen. Here in Salida, people say they're hoping this can help bring justice and closure.
This feels at least like information that helps us know that she's not continuing to suffer. I think there was a lot of concern about whether or not she was still suffering. And I think that has brought some relief to people.
Now, according to the husband, Barry Morphew, and his family, they say they expected her to walk into the door at any moment, just walk through the door. My question would be, were her assets moved into his name? Did he actually vote for her while he was expecting her to walk in the door at any minute? That and a lot of unanswered questions remain on the table. But with me, an all-star panel to make sense of what we know right now. For those of you just joining us, the remains of missing mom, Suzanne Morphew, have been found, and they are absolutely her remains. First, to Lauren Scharf joining us on the scene with me in Colorado, looking as best we could for clues. Lauren Scharf, tell me about the discovery of Suzanne Morphew's remains. Where were the remains discovered?
They were found in a remote, dry desert field of sagebrush and natural grasses south of Moffett, according to the Saguache County coroner, Tom Perrin.
Let me take in what you're just saying, Lauren. Lauren,
okay.
You always give me so much information. I'm going to take it line by line. Remote, dry desert, a field about 40 miles from her home. Is that correct, Lauren Scharf?
Yeah, and it appeared that the remains had been buried in a shallow grave before being scattered.
Okay, that's telling me a lot. I'm going to come right back to you, Lauren Scharf, but to renowned professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, author of Blood Beneath My Feet on Amazon, and star of a new hit series, Body Bags, with Joseph Scott Morgan. Joe Scott, thank you for being with us. Well, there you go. This was not a suicide unless she fell into a shallow grave and tried to cover her body up. So we know that she was buried by another person. We know she didn't bike there. Her bike was found not too far from her home. So what did she do? Hitchhike?
You look at it, you look at this case and you think, the first key here is this word shallow, Nancy. And in my experience, when you hear the term shallow, that means rushed. That means something that's not very well thought out. If you're trying to conceal something and hide it, you're going to take your time, almost excavate the area, if you will, to go as deep as you possibly can, because now not only do they have shallow grave, but from what we're hearing, we're also talking about scattered remains, which means that they were easily accessed by any kind of carnivore or scavengers that are out there. And that creates a problem. But the most important thing is that we have a day that has arrived that I did not see coming.
Really? Because
Yes.
I always believed that we would find Suzanne Morphew. I didn't know
No,
when.
ma'am. This is this is dumb luck, I think, as far as I'm concerned. I don't mean that.
You know what I would call it?
If
Just
you're
Scott
working
Morgan cut
on
his
another
mic.
case.
I would call it divine intervention.
Okay.
I would not call it.
Gotcha.
He's still talking, isn't he? Wow, I thought you could cut his mic. Can you now do that? Straight out to Cheryl McCollum joining us, forensics expert, founder, director of Cold Case Research Institute. You can find her at coldcasecrimes.org. And she is a star of a brand new podcast, and it's a hit, Zone 7. You know, I want to talk to you about this case going cold, but it's only been 3 years, and I don't know that I would call that cold. That's something for you and I to talk over a game of checkers. Let's talk about the facts right now. Cheryl McCollum, shallow grave. And I like what Joe Scott Morgan just said about it being in haste, 40 miles. And I know that your computer brain is analyzing all of this at the same time. Just because I cut your mic, Joe Scott Morgan, doesn't mean you can't keep thinking. Think. 40 miles away from her home. She didn't go by bike. She didn't go by car. She's buried in a shallow grave that was so shallow, it was easy for animals to get to her and tear her remains apart. Analysis.
Nancy, being there with you in that area gave me so much information I wouldn't have known before. That ground is hard. It is rough terrain. It would take hours, half a day probably, to, get a decent grave going to completely cover somebody. This person did not have time to do that.
Okay, hold on, Cheryl McCollum. I agree with what you just said. And in a moment, I'm going to go back to Joe Scott on this. Hold on. Hard ground. Analyze that again. Remember just recently you and I were out on a legitimately cold, frozen case, trying to look with ground penetrating radar to see any anomalies within the soil. And we did see anomalies within the soil. That soil was very easily disturbed. Not so where Suzanne Morphew's remains had been found. Analyze, Cheryl.
It's filled with rocks and difficult terrain. I mean, you couldn't hardly get a shovel in the ground, Nancy. And we always knew the bike was staged. Now we have proof. She never went down that ravine. There was never any real evidence she was on that bicycle. But here's what I'm really wanting to know. The clothing found on that body. Is it the clothing she was wearing for that last selfie? Or was she in pajamas? Because if you remember, Barry said she was asleep when he left. So what clothing is with the remains? This is going to tell you whether or not it was that afternoon that she, went missing wearing those same clothes or pajamas. The other thing is we're going to know, was she shot? Possibly. There'll be evidence. Stabbed, strangled. There'll be evidence. Was she bound with anything like rope? Is any jewelry missing? But I'm telling you, the money tree is the clothes she has on, because that's going to tell you whether or not he said something that was not true.
Or if she still had on that bikini she was wearing. I mean, her swimsuit
That's what I'm saying,
that she was wearing. No,
selfie.
you didn't say that. You said PJs. I'm saying
I said
her
the last
swimsuit.
selfie. Absolutely. The last selfie she was taking.
If I don't get me a best friend at Nancy's age, like the relationship that her and Cheryl McCollum have, then I don't want it. I want someone to tell me, no, you didn't say that. Like, they're just funny together. They really are funny together. They complement each other. Nancy's so rude to Cheryl, and Cheryl just takes it. I love Nancy. Speaking of which, she's standing behind me back there. She's hanging out.
Or in pajamas, because he said she was still asleep. So if it was the clothing that she had on in that last selfie.
We know he came in and busted up in there when she was sitting outside in her swimsuit, we think, taking photos that she sent to a guy that she had been dating. That's what we think may have happened. Do we know that? No. But her clothing is going to be very critical, and Cheryl McCollum is absolutely right. Hold on, Lauren Scharf. Hold on, Tyson Draper, Mike Hadsell, Karen Stark, and Eric Faddis. Unleash Joe Scott Morgan again. Uncut his mic. Let's talk about what we just heard from Cheryl McCollum. Very narrow question. Joe Scott Morgan, you're the expert on this. Her remains have been scattered by animal activity. That's a euphemism for animals tearing her body apart. That's what happened. Scattered by animal activity is just airbrushing what really happened to Suzanne Morphew's body. But given that, this is going to be tough, Joe Scott Morgan. Can they get a COD if she was stabbed or if she was shot? Okay. Now, I know asphyxiation of any type, strangulation, it's going to be very hard to get that COD. But what about stabbing and what about a gunshot? Joe Scott Morgan.
Yeah, let's think about stabbing real quick. If we're talking about stabbing, one of the things that we're going to be looking for, particularly as it applies to the chest area and to the back as well, Nancy, you'll get tool marks that may cross across the ribs. And if you look at
Hold on.
it's
Fire hydrant.
Yep.
I'm drinking from the fire hydrant.
Sorry.
Hydrant. Okay.
Yep.
Tool marks across the ribs. Slow down
Right.
just a second. Let me visualize what you're saying. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and let me give you a good visual here. Think about the letter V, okay? Think about the letter V. And with a tool mark, we would be
Tool
looking...
mark means where the knife hits, or
Hits
whatever
the
the
bone.
instrument is, hits the bone
Right.
and leaves a mark. Go
Right.
ahead. Like
And
you are trying to open a jar and it won't open. So you bam it on the kitchen counter and whoops, you left a mark on the counter. That's a tool mark.
Correct. That
Go
is
ahead.
a tool mark. Yeah, and so if you're talking about an edged weapon, and we're talking about stabbing here, okay? Not a slashing, but a stabbing where it passes, say, for instance, between the ribs. You'll look for this little V-shaped mark on the leading or the upper or the lower edge of the rib, all right? That could be possible, but if you go into purely soft tissue, say if you twist the blade and turn it so that it goes in between the ribs, there's a lesser of a probability you're going to see that. Also,
wait, just Scott.
Yeah.
Let's just pretend for the moment that we're talking to a jury. Okay. So you're saying in regular people talk, if the knife or a bullet even hit her bone, it would leave a tool mark. But if the knife or the bullet went, for instance, through the ribs, it would not leave a mark on the bones. It would not leave a tool mark. Okay, go ahead.
And you mentioned bullet wounds just a moment ago, gunfire. Again, one of the areas that you're going to be looking for here in particular are flat bones, like the sternum, for instance, maybe the scapula, and certainly the skull. The problem with these kinds of cases is that the body is broken up into various elements, very tiny elements, as a matter of fact. I'm hearing probably a 75-yard radius in this particular case. So they're going to be dispersed. I'm sure that they've taken their time.
Joe Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but I just want to give illustrations. Do you remember when Kelly Anthony, 2-year-old Kelly Anthony's body was found in that swampy area about 10 houses down from Tot Mom Casey Anthony's home? They worked through the night. They worked, I don't know, maybe 2 nights in a row. They had a tent out there with bright light shining down, trying to find all of that little baby's bones, including like tiny pieces of her finger. What do we have? 206 bones in the human body. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
And for instance, the finger, each finger breaks into 3 pieces. I mean, just.
Yeah. The rule of thumb in forensic anthropology and recovery is the smaller the bone, the less of the probability is that you're going to recover it. Because I know the word that is hanging in everybody's mind right now is going to be hyoid. And hyoid is one of the most difficult bones to recover on a skeletal
this is crazy.
recovery.
That's what I was actually thinking. Can you find the hyoid? Because earlier I said Joe Scott's going to be more difficult with her. She's obviously skeletonized. There's no flesh left on her. Probably hair, yes. But without flesh, you won't be able to tell if pressure has been exerted on her throat. Therefore, you would look to the hyoid bone, which is so fragile.
It is fragile. And, I know your listeners are so bright, and you've probably said this before, but it bears repeating. It's the only bone in the human body that's not connected to another bone. It's the only unarticulated
hanging
bone.
there.
Yeah, and it's the only purpose is to hold the tongue in place, and so it's it's kind of free floating, if you will, particularly in a skeletal state like this. The only other thing I can really think of that we haven't covered is probably blunt force trauma. You really need the skull for that. If she has sustained some kind of depressed skull fracture or even a skull fracture that's not associated with a gunshot wound, you might be able to pick up on that. And it would still be visible to that degree. I have a hard time imagining that there would be any soft tissue and to that degree any hair left after 3 years. But that remains to be seen. It will be fascinating to find out as we go along.
I'm very curious about so many things that you just said, and I'm in agreement with everything you and Cheryl have brought out. To Lauren Scharf joining me, you can find her at Lauren Scharf TV. Very well-known journalist. Lauren, yes, no. Do we believe they found Suzanne's skull?
Yes.
Why do you think that?
I believe that's how they positively identified her from her dental records.
You're absolutely correct. Let's take a listen to our Cut 160 KUSA.
It was an unrelated investigation that finally led deputies to Suzanne Morphew's body in Saguache County. Tonight, a source familiar with the investigation told 9 News they discovered skeletal remains and identified Suzanne based on dental records and her cancer report. She disappeared from her home in Salida in 2020. Prosecutors eventually arrested her husband, Barry Morphew, charged him with murder. They dropped those charges last year, just 9 days before you said to go on trial. They said they wanted to go to trial once they found Suzanne's body.
Of course, cases have been tried without a body. Take a listen to our Cut A. Does the name Kelsey Barrett ring a bell?
Frazee told him, quote, "I figured out a way to kill her. No body, no crime," right? Days after Kelsey was reported missing, Frazee told Moore he didn't understand why her disappearance was getting national attention. Moore also told the court that Frazee said, "Man, if I had known it was going to blow up this big, I never would have." Moore says Frazee never really finished that thought. He also said Frazee never seemed concerned about Kelsey's disappearance.
You're hearing our friends at KUSA, and as a matter of fact, that case was prosecuted successfully. Remember, Kelsey Barrett, the mom of one, goes missing. And, of course, a name that everyone will recall, Kristen Smart. Take a listen to our Cut B.
It is alleged that Mr. Flores caused the death of Kristen Smart while in the commission of or attempted rape. No body homicides are obviously complicated and difficult, but we don't make a decision to file unless we believe we can prove the case.
Now, he asked the DA if he would seek out a plea deal or a lighter sentence in exchange for information leading to Kristen's body. But Dow says it's a little premature at this time.
Another case successful without a body. Those were our friends at KSBY, so it can be done. Back to the reason, the identification of Suzanne Morphew's body, Lauren Scharf is correct. The identification was made through dental records, so we know that the skull was recovered, but also her cancer report, which is heartbreaking that this mom, who had been valiantly fighting cancer, a recurrence of cancer, was partially identified by her cancer report. Tyson Draper joining me from the Tyson Draper Show on TikTok, Tyson Draper Show. Tyson, recall very distinctly when you and I, Lauren, Cheryl McCollum, and others were tromping all across the Salida area, looking for clues, looking for answers. Reaction?
Well, the first thing I want to say, Nancy, is I am in total agreement with you on this being divine intervention. And one of the highlights of that trip of us being all of us going up there to Colorado was when we formed a circle there and we all joined hands and you had me say a prayer and we prayed specifically that day that we would find the remains of Suzanne Morphew. And honestly, Nancy, as we were standing there in that circle and you looked around in this vast environment, we had mountains and trees and streams and everything. Honestly, it was like a needle in a haystack. And honestly, my hopes were really thin at that time, but I knew that God was in charge, and what a wonderful, glorious day this is.
You know, Tyson, I know a lot of people don't understand that what you said to us is so true. It is a wonderful and a glorious day, because at that moment when all of us were in a prayer circle praying for justice, praying that somehow her body would be found, because everything had failed up until that moment. You know, we looked around, and you're right, it was so vast. All the places where her body could be. And tick tock, as every moment passed, it would be less likely she would be found. But that day, I remember you asking, do you think they'll ever find her? I said, oh yeah, they will find her. One day, they will find her. I thought it might be 20, 25 years when hunters were out hunting somewhere and they come across a human bone. But I had no idea that it would be this soon. Joining me right now, high-profile lawyer Eric Faddis, partner at Varner Faddis Elite Legal, former felony prosecutor. You can find him at varnerfaddis.com. P.S. I think your name should be first. Eric Faddis, 3 years or 20 years, it does make a difference with every day, every minute that passes. And I've tried cases that are very old before. You lose witnesses. People's memories fade. That's why you got to write everything down, record every statement, every detail, every measurement, you name it. I remember one case I went to the scene. Of course, Eric Faddis, it was a murder case. At that point, it was a suicide case. I was standing in the woman's room looking. She was found dead, naked in her bed, ostensibly dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Of course, I didn't believe that this lady killed herself buck naked in her bed. I did not believe that, just based on statistics. And I was watching the medical examiner, investigators, a whole different crew of investigators, measuring how many inches away from the bed the spent shell was. And I was thinking, why do they want to know that? Well, obviously, because every detail matters. And it did matter. And by the way, she was murdered. And it was proven at trial. Eric Faddis, 3 years seems like a long time, but in the world of criminal prosecution, it's not a long time. A conviction can be had.
Oh, heck, absolutely. You know, there are cases that are decades old that go to trial and secure a conviction. Here, we're 3 years out, and it's problematic for some reasons. You know, evidence erodes. We don't have the tissue to test to see if there is any sort of tranquilizer material, as has been alleged against Barry Morphew beforehand. But this is still a critical piece of this prosecution. It was really the reason that law enforcement dismissed beforehand. Now that they've got it, I think it's without question they're going to refile this case.
Wow, that was a mouthful, Eric Faddis, and I mean that in a good way. A lot of information. I can't tell.
Hey, Nancy, can I jump back in?
Oh, could I stop you? Go ahead.
Well, I just want to paint this picture, too, for people when you're looking at...
Wait a minute. Everybody get comfortable. If she's going to paint a picture, there's going to be a lot of brushstrokes. Go ahead.
Was this a stranger or somebody that knew her? When you look at the amount of time this person spent, this killer went to her home, got her bicycle, got her helmet, put the bicycle in one place, drove her helmet to another place, drove her body to another place, attempted to bury her, then attempted to get rid of whatever instruments and tools that he used for that purpose. Does that sound like a stranger would go to that much trouble?
OHELLNO, lady. Karen Stark joining me, renowned psychologist out of Manhattan, TV, radio, trauma expert, consultant at KarenStark.com. That's Karen with a C if you're trying to look her up. Karen Stark, she's so right on. You jumped ahead of me, Cheryl McCollum, but you're right. Everybody on this panel, jump in. We need all of the brain power we can get. Come on, please. Karen Stark, I have investigated and prosecuted so many cases where, for instance, there's a burglary, the perp sees the homeowner come in and go, why are you in my home? Bam, shoots him, and they run. There's no dragging the body 40 miles away and burying it in a shallow grave. There's no putting the helmet here and the bike here. No, they want to hightail it and get away from that dead body as fast as they can. Only someone, I believe, connected to the victim is going to take the time to stage the scene. And boy, was this staged. And there's no doubt in my mind, guys, this is a secondary at best crime scene. This is not where Suzanne Morphew was killed. Jump in, Karen, start. Give me the psychology behind all this staging of the scene.
Was brilliant, because it's true that somebody who does not know her would never be able to go back, spend that much time. It's such a risk, Nancy. Find the bicycle, then the helmet, go different places. And also, to me, that shallow grave, in addition to the fact that it was hard to dig a grave, but it's the sign of somebody who could care less about what happened with that body in person. It's just, let me just get rid of this as quickly as I can and get out of here. And
to make sure that it was actually Suzanne's bike and her helmet that they grabbed.
Repeat?
Making sure that they grabbed the right bike as far as Suzanne's bike and her helmet to hide.
And how would they know, right?
How many bikes were there, Lauren Scharf or Tyson Draper?
Well,
that's a great question.
Well, I want to remind everybody too, Nancy, that this was a Sunday morning. This was Mother's Day. So, Sundays are generally really quiet as well. And the population of Maysville, Colorado is 167 people. So we're not talking about some metropolitan area that has tons and tons of people and tons of crime. This is a very isolated area. So you got to take all that into consideration as well. I mean,
and it was COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people were homebound.
About either. It was the beginning of it.
You are both exactly correct. Now, you said it was Sunday morning. How do I know she wasn't killed Saturday night, Tyson Draper?
Well, I'm sure she was. We have a window of opportunity there that we've talked about now for years. And, it's just now, when we were in elementary school, we used to always do the connecting the dots, and that's kind of what we've been doing the last 3.5 years. And now we got this huge piece of the puzzle here where we can start connecting these dots. And it's looking like we were right on track all along.
Mike Hadsell joining me. You know his name, I'm sure, you legal eagles out there. President and founder of Peace River Canine Search and Rescue. Online, you can find him at PRSAR, Peace River Search and Rescue.org. Mike, how often do you find a body that's been in a shallow grave?
Well, we find quite a few of them. And actually, we should be thankful that he buried her, because that preserved her for quite a while before the critters were able to get to her and scatter her remains. So if they hadn't, the desert eats things up pretty quickly. So we would not have the success if it hadn't been for the guy burying her, whoever that was.
So in the desert, there's rapid decomposure. And I'm going to go to you, Joe Scott, on why. But I want to point out to everybody, no one has been charged since, of course, the charges were dropped against her husband, Barry Morphew, some time ago. No one is currently named a POI, person of interest. Nobody has been arrested. Just want to put that out there. Nobody yet. Okay, Joe Scott Morgan, I want to follow up on what Mike Hadsell just said, and he's completely correct. I want you to hit me on how rapidly a body would decompose in the desert. Burying her in a shallow grave, would that have slowed down the decomposure process? I have another question for you, too, about the staging. This is at least a secondary crime scene, not where she was killed, I don't believe anyway. And if the animals had torn her body apart, would they have torn apart her clothing as well? But wouldn't you expect to find her clothing within that 75-yard radius?
Yes, you do. It's that happens quite a bit. And what's going to be really fascinating from a forensic standpoint, Nancy, when you talk about the breakdown of any kind of items, whether it's a body or clothing, if she's going out for a bike ride, commonly many people wear things that are synthetics, right? And synthetics can be more resilient many times than natural fibers. So it's possible that you can, locate those. And the disbursement pattern that you're talking about with remains, one of the things that also happens is that if you have small burrowing animals that, exist in this area, they'll actually take some of those items into their burrows. So there are times when you can go back and find even other things after the initial search of that area, when you're going out and actually doing an excavation of the area from a forensic anthropology standpoint. Now, as to preservation, it's good and bad. In more arid climates, sometimes soft tissue will last a bit longer than it would, say, down here in the South. Certainly where I trained down in South Louisiana, it would. However, the environment is very harsh. Hot is hot out there. You don't deal with a lot of relative humidity. Many times, dependent upon the scavenger activity, those bits of soft tissue will go pretty quickly if they're not protected. And being in a grave, I have to say that Mike is right on target here, as opposed to just laying a body out on the ground. You have some level of protection. However, there would have been more protection if, in fact, you maybe had gone deeper. I think, and I'll leave it at this. One thing I'd be fascinated to know, Nancy, was the body shrouded in any way, because a lot of these cases we cover where we have these clandestine graves, bodies will be wrapped in plastic. I've had shower curtains, trash bags, all these sorts of things, and that just further cocoons the body. And sometimes the critters will dig down into that area, rip the bags open, and get to the remain that is in there. That's going to be important to see if they recover any kind of plastic that's out on the scene, or anything, even a cloth shroud that may have been used.
I haven't heard anything, Lauren Sharf, about her body being wrapped or in any sort of a container. Example, JJ and Tylee, the victims of cult mom Lori Vallow and her husband Chad Daybell, according to police. JJ's body was basically hermetically sealed. Not so for Tylee. Any word on that you've heard, Lauren Sharf or Tyson Draper?
I haven't, Nancy. I have not heard anything.
I haven't either.
No, I have not either.
Okay. I think that would have somehow leaked out if she had been wrapped in a tarp or any other such enclosure. I understand, Lauren Sharf, you have spoken to her sister. Is that true?
I have. Mm-hmm.
What did you learn?
When she first told me, I was speechless. She told me it was just, we were both just overwhelmed with emotions. The waterworks started, and it's bittersweet. You're happy, but then also sad, because then it brings up, so much. And it starts over for the family. I mean, I think one of the last press conferences the Barry Morphew's attorney gave was saying that the Barry and the daughters were just now kind of getting back to normal. And so I can't imagine what they're going through now.
Why was a search crew in that area? Take a listen to our cut 173 from CBS.
They told us they weren't even actually looking for Suzanne when they found her body out there. They're looking for something completely different. But results from the El Paso County Coroner's Office did come back positive today. They said that it is Suzanne's body. CBI is not saying a specific location of where they found her or what condition her body was in.
CBI says investigators were searching near Moffett for an unrelated investigation when they found those remains. That's northwest of the Great Sand Dunes. They have not said how she died or released a cause of death or really any other information about her. At this point, CBI says it has not made any arrests, but it's just the latest development in a very complicated case.
Northwest of the Great Sand Dunes. Okay, to you, Tyson Draper, where's that? What does that mean?
Well, what that means is it's just on the outskirts of Salida. It's where somebody would, drive and looking for a spot to go dump a body. It's very mountainous. It's very, a lot of prairies. It's very isolated. So if something happened in Maysville or Salida, as we know it did, it would be the first place that somebody is trying to get outside of that area, on the outskirts to hide a body. So it's not very far from Salida. It's just kind of over the mountain, over the pass there a little bit. And it's just a small little town, Moffett, that little area right there, as you're heading back down towards Alamosa.
Guys, I'm very curious to figure out how Barry Morphew is responding. Take a listen to Hour Cut 170, Fox 31.
The Morphew family releasing a statement through their attorney just moments ago, saying in part, Barry is with his daughters and they are all struggling with immense shock and grief after learning today that their mother and wife, whom they deeply love, was found deceased. They had faith that their wife and mom would walk back into their lives again. The news is heartbreaking. They go on to say neither the DA nor the authorities notified Mallory and Macy Morphew, those are the daughters, about the recovery of their mom.
So they believed that she would walk back into their lives again. Tyson Draper, question to you. Maybe I'm wrong. Did Barry Morphew move? I'm pretty sure he very quickly sold the home that they shared together. Did he move all of her assets into his name?
Yes. Yeah, and that, that statement that you made again there, and you made it at the top of the hour too here, is that Barry and the family, were kind of like Motel 6, like we're going to leave the light on for you, wait for Suzanne to return. But what I viewed is that wasn't the case at all. Barry was in a hurry to sell all the assets, to sell the home, to sell her cars, to sell everything. And then not only that, but he got, as we all know, he got a girlfriend shortly thereafter as well. So if they're expecting Suzanne Morphew to come walking through that door, why did all of this happen? Why would Barry's actions don't line up with his words here?
And
remember that less than a month after Suzanne went missing, he filed for guardianship, which really rubbed her family the wrong way because they believed she was just missing.
Guardianship, explain.
Guardianship of Suzanne, so for her assets, for selling the home in Indiana that they had left, so that they could get the money from the sale.
So this is for a person that believes his wife is going to walk right back through the door. Does anybody remember Scott Peterson? And again, Barry Morphew has not been recharged. He's not been named a person of interest. He's not been arrested. Nothing like that. Does anybody remember Scott Peterson? Karen Stark, do you remember that immediately when Lacey went missing, he, sold her vehicle. He immediately ordered the porn channel, all sorts of expenditures and actions he would never have taken if he really thought she was about to walk back through the door.
That's why he was so unbelievable and unsympathetic, Nancy, because he absolutely went and started his life again and acted very clearly as though he didn't expect her to come back. So when I think about children, they would keep wondering and hoping and thinking that their mom would come back. And it would be much better for them to know that she was found and have closure. But I don't get that he felt that way at all, because that is not how he proceeded with his life. Right away, a month. That's no time.
Yeah, a question on that. Tyson Draper, how quickly did the girlfriend emerge?
Oh, it was shortly after Suzanne went missing.
What do you mean shortly? A week, 2 weeks, a month, a year?
Well, I would say a couple months, maybe a month and a half, somewhere around there.
Eric Faddis, high-profile lawyer, joining us, former prosecutor. That's never a good look.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's surely problematic. And, one thing that's going to come up too, Barry's been talking a lot in the media about this case, even since it began. And so the jury, if he is recharged, which he hasn't been yet, is going to hear about all of these inconsistent statements and how they don't really align with Susan's body being found. So I think it's really a tremendous development of the case legally.
think a lot's going to ride on whether we can find out what clothing, if any, she had on at the time her body was disposed in that desert area near the Great Dunes. For right now, let's just take the miracle that's dropped in our laps. Suzanne Morphew has been found. Now, let's seek justice. Goodbye, friend.
Okay. So that was Nancy Grace. So I was over here searching while we were watching Nancy Grace for other things to show you guys over Suzanne Morphew, like what was the latest and greatest. And they are actually doing a premiere right now on Court TV over this case. So I figured we could just rewind it back a little bit and watch it. And then I can actually fast forward through these little commercial breaks that they take. But they just started premiering this 22 minutes ago. So we're going to see what they have to say. Maybe they'll have some new information that we haven't heard yet. I do think that they probably are going to refile charges on Barry, just a matter of time. I wonder where Barry is. Does anyone know where he's located? If he's still in Colorado or if he's living in a different state now? I'm not sure about that. So if you guys know, let me know in the chat. But I'll go ahead and play this. If you guys wouldn't mind just taking a second to hit the like button, it does help the channel grow, and you guys are all fantastic. Thank you for being here tonight. There we go. Oh, let me turn them up.
Been saying it's a big week here at Court TV. A lot of movement in cases that we've been following and tracking for years. And one of them is the disappearance of Suzanne Morphew. This is a woman married, 2 children, a husband, living in this beautiful home in Colorado, goes missing on Mother's Day. Well, this week, her remains have been recovered, and we have a lot that we want to get to in this story. But first, let's walk you through the timeline to give you a little more perspective on what happened and transpired during the course of this case. So May 9th, 2020, Suzanne Morphew's last known communication is a selfie sent to her lover in Michigan. He replied, but she did not respond to his reply messages. May 10th, the next day, Barry, Suzanne's husband, says Suzanne was still sleeping when he left for business. Now, this May 10th, this is Mother's Day, in Broomfield, Colorado. He's seen on surveillance at a Broomfield Holiday Inn with 2 white trash bags that morning. It's a little odd, but he is away. Barry's seen on surveillance video placing the items into trash cans all around Broomfield, Colorado. That's kind of weird. I'm sorry, that's just weird. You take trash and you're throwing, I mean, there might be a reason for it, I guess, but still a little suspicious. Later that day, Suzanne is reported missing. Suzanne's bicycle is found near their home down a steep ravine off Chaffee County Road 225 from Highway 50. And that was a big part of the initial investigation. Maybe she went for a bike ride, maybe there was an accident, mountain lions, abduction, something. Like what is it? How did the bike get there? May 11th, the next day, the search efforts begin. Hundreds of people work to find Suzanne. A reward for information on her disappearance begins to grow. May 13th, Suzanne's bike helmet is found less than a mile from where her bicycle was located. That's also an interesting fact, right? What does that mean? What picture does that paint? May 17th, so this is 1 week later, Barry Morphew posts a video online pleading for Suzanne's safe return. In the video, he seems to take the approach that he believes she has been abducted and says, return her, no questions asked. Okay, May 20th. This is where things get even more interesting. Investigators locate a spy pen during the search of the Morphew's residence. In one of the files, Suzanne apparently places the pen inside Barry's car, where it records him listening to multiple episodes of Forensic Files. Now, obviously, watching forensic files is not suspicious, right? Because I mean, we've had forensic files on Court TV. It's where the whole thing started, right? But still kind of interesting when you think about how things transpired here. May 5th, 2021, okay, this is a year later. Barry is arrested, charged with first-degree murder and other crimes. April 19th, 2022, flash forward almost another year. Everyone's getting ready for the trial, including Court TV. Days before the trial is set to begin, prosecutors drop charges against Barry Morphew without prejudice, meaning they can refile them. And in this picture, you see Barry, that's him with his two daughters, who absolutely believe that their father is 1,000% innocent in all of this. September 22nd, Suzanne Morphew's remains are found in Moffett, Colorado during an apparent unrelated search. An unrelated search. That's a little peculiar, a little different. You're investigating another case and you find this case, which has been investigated for years. September 27th, the remains of Suzanne Morphew were positively identified. So that gives you some idea of how everything has transpired since Suzanne Morphew was last heard from and was reported missing. So you got to go back. You got to go back to 2020. Let's bring in a special guest joining me from Denver, Colorado tonight. Reporter for the Denver Gazette, Carol McKinley is with us. Carol, thank you so much for joining us tonight, doing great reporting on this. Let me start with where Suzanne's remains were found. And I know there were reports, and I believe you were the one that was reporting all of this, that there was a potential lead and there was thought that there was a spot where her body was that was difficult to access, maybe, and police were, it was going to take some time to get there. Is this the area, is this the same area, we believe, where they thought she may have been and where they ended up finding her?
Great question, Vinny. No, in fact, the investigation never even considered this area. This is a place that surprised everyone who was involved in the original investigation. They were looking up in the mountains behind the Morphew's home, where there are a bunch of old mines. You know, Colorado was an old gold mining area. There were silver mines, and those go way deep down. And so I know that some of the investigation was centering around these mines, and nothing was ever found in them. Some of the reasoning was when they dropped this case, we know where she is, but she's underneath a bunch of snow, and we're going to have to wait till the thaw. Well, the thaw came. They didn't find anything. Fast forward to this year, another thaw, and it didn't matter anyway because that's not where she was. She was in this place about 45 minutes from where the Morphews lived, their mountain home, which was remote. This is also remote, but it's a field. And it's kind of a pasture where there's sagebrush and dry grass. And I'm told it was near a road, but it was just enough off the road to where you couldn't really see if someone was digging. You couldn't really see what was going on or understand.
That's interesting, but remote, right? Yeah. Nonetheless, you're not in the middle of a town somewhere. This is an area where maybe you could pull off the side of the road and maybe no one comes by.
Yeah, and this is directly south, about 45 minutes from the Morphew home. Now, what I'm told is the way to get back to Broomfield, if Barry Morphew were to drive 45 minutes south, bury the body, add another 45 minutes on, let's say you add 3 hours to that trip to Broomfield, he couldn't do it. I mean, he was not in Saguache on May 10th. His GPS didn't go there and his cell phone didn't go there. So it kind of makes everybody take another look and say, well, Barry was arrested for this. He was charged for it. Did he go to jail for no reason? Is he the wrong guy? Are there two people? Did someone help him? Was there an individual who was maybe a serial killer who got involved in this? And it wasn't Barry at all. So I think finding these remains, these bones, which were found and scattered across this field, only brings up more questions.
Oh, a ton of questions. Now, what struck me was they were investigating another case. is this other case, do we know what it is? Is it a murder case? And did they find anything related to that case in this area?
They didn't. The other case is a woman named Edna Quintana who went missing last May 3rd, so of 2023. She was walking around in this town called Saguache, last seen walking, and just disappeared. Her body hasn't been found, but that's who Colorado Bureau of Investigation detectives were looking for when they came across Suzanne Morphew's bones. They were like, oh my gosh, this isn't Edna Quintana. It's too old because she went missing in May. Who could this be? And so they had, meetings, and they called the DA of that area, which is a different DA who's been prosecuting this case all along. They, got a hold of the coroner, and they sent these remains up to a coroner in El Paso County, which is Colorado Springs, and he's the one who identified Suzanne Morphew.
So from my perspective, when I first heard of Suzanne's story, I'm like, this doesn't strike me as an area where you would have one of these crimes of opportunity, where someone is going for a bike ride or going jogging. It's so remote, and then someone would grab them, murder them, and get rid of their body. But now you're telling me there's another woman, less than an hour away, who was out for a walk and disappeared. Is there any, fear out there right now that there could be some sort of mountain serial killer in Colorado?
I haven't heard that there's any fear, but I don't live down there. It's about 4 hours away from Denver to the south. I don't live there, so I don't know if there's fear, but Barry Morphew's attorney is suggesting that this could be the same person, especially since this woman went missing on May 3rd, which is about the same time that Suzanne Morphew disappeared. That was May 9th, 10th. So she's wondering if there's a link. I mean, she's trying to connect whatever she can to make sure the attention goes away from Barry Morphew.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about some of the evidence, though, because he was, like we all said, he was arrested for murder. He was charged. We were waiting for the trial to begin. How about that tranquilizer dart gun that we read about? What do we know about that tranquilizer dart gun?
Well, we know that this was a theory of the prosecution, that perhaps he shot her with a dart gun in order to get her, incapacitated so that he could then kill her later. That was the prosecution's theory. There was a piece of that dart, that little piece you see right there, part of a syringe, that was found in the dryer at the Morphew home by investigators. Now, this is just a theory. The dart gun really didn't work very well. I don't know how viable it is, but it is something that if she had been hit by that dart gun, she would have gone to sleep. The prosecution and the investigation with the sheriff's office interviewed a woman up in Fort Collins at Colorado State University who studies veterinary medicine. And this dart gun and the medicine you put in the gun is used to tranquilize animals. And she said that if a female or someone the size of Suzanne Morphew was shot with this thing, she would have gone to sleep and wouldn't have been able to move.
How about
That's just a theory.
Right.
I don't know if it's true.
How about the bags of trash? So I've covered cases where, there's a husband accused of murdering his wife, dismembering her, putting her in different bags of trash, throwing it out all around town. What do we know about the bags of trash that he's throwing away the morning that he drives away from his house and goes on this business trip?
Well, it is curious that he drove away from his home to go to Broomfield at 5 o'clock in the morning on Mother's Day. He had a job up there to do, and the job wasn't really supposed to be done until Monday. So in other words, the next day, the 11th. For some reason, he went to Broomfield early in the morning, got there about 8 in the morning, and he was out throwing trash in different places. There was a McDonald's where he really stuffed something small and, really pushed it down. There's video of it. He went to a men's warehouse and stuffed trash there. He stuffed trash at the hotel where he was staying. And he actually went out to the landscaping scene where he was putting in a retaining wall. He got back to the hotel about noon. He's seen on surveillance here as you are looking. You're seeing him with the trash. He changed clothes, and then he went into that room for 5 hours. He didn't come out until about 5:55, and one would not tell investigators what he was doing for 5 hours in that hotel room. So that is a mystery because there were no cameras inside the room. There are just the cameras that show him walking around in the hall, coming back and forth and removing tools and placing tools. He got the call about his wife's disappearance at about 5:15 from one of his neighbors. So he was still in the hotel room. And then about 40 minutes later is when he decided to drive back down to his home, 3-hour drive. And that's when he showed up, and investigators were there worried about where his wife was.
Wow. Now, she had a boyfriend, right? And she was snapping this selfie. What was the status of their marriage, and did he have a girlfriend?
Did Barry have a girlfriend?
Yeah.
No, not that we know of. In fact, she bought that spy pin to catch him in the act, and instead it caught her in the act.
Right.
You know, she didn't tell anybody about this boyfriend, not even her best friend, who she confided everything to about her marriage. And she was talking about a spiraling marriage. She was talking about leaving him. She confided in this girlfriend everything, but she didn't tell him about her boyfriend, who she had a fling with for about 2 years. That was going on for 2 years. They saw each other 6 times in those 2 years. And there were lots of texts, hundreds of texts between the two of them. But no, Barry Morphew, from all indications, did not have a relationship with another woman.
And it was Mother's Day. They have 2 lovely daughters. Where were their children on that day?
That's a good question. They were on a trip. They were on like a camping trip or something. And they had texted her on Mother's Day to say Happy Mother's Day and didn't get a response. And that's when they started getting nervous. I think they're the ones, it's kind of unclear to me now trying to remember, but I think they're the ones who called the neighbors and said, would you go look at the garage and see if our mom's there, see what you see, is her car there? And it, there was no sign of Suzanne Morphew. And that's when the neighbor decided I'd better call Barry and find out if Barry knows anything. So, yeah, the sisters, the 2 girls, one was living at home still because she was a senior in high school, junior or senior. The other one was in college. So the younger one had told Suzanne to get a restraining order or get a divorce. She was telling her mother, this isn't working, Mom. She saw the fights. The oldest sister did not see all that because she was at college. So that's been a real curiosity to see both girls sit always on the side of their dad, in the courtroom. You know, they would do heart hands and they would cry, and they are generally sad about losing both their mom and then losing their dad when he went to jail.
Yeah. Family tragedy. Children, from what I've seen in most of the cases I've covered, an overwhelming majority, the children, whether they're young or adults, will always stay with the surviving spouse, even if they're charged with murder, regardless of the evidence. Carol McKinley, amazing. Denver Gazette, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
So good to see you. Thanks a lot for asking.
All right, folks. When we come back, we'll bring in
I'm gonna fast forward through this little part
where her husband says he was the day she.
There is a commercial.
And she told you she was going to go bike riding? She bikes every day, yeah. Okay. She said she's going to bike when she gets up. So she was asleep in the bed when you left? Did you say bye to her or anything? No, she's asleep. Okay. Always sleeping. So the last time you probably actually saw her was this morning. That was it, right? Yeah, I've been here. I got a big job up there. I've been here all day.
So there's Barry Morphew speaking to officers about his wife. He says, listen, I left, she was asleep. And then I went and I was working all day in Broomfield, Colorado. So let's take a look, because as he's told investigators where he was that day that she went missing. So let's kind of put this all in perspective and put a map up on the screen. And we begin with Suzanne and Barry's Colorado home. It's in the Maysville area of Salida, Colorado. Suzanne's bike was found nearby the day that she went missing, May 10th, 2020. Now, her remains are found in Moffett, Colorado. more than 3 years after she disappeared. It's about a 51-minute drive from the Morphew's home to where her remains are found. You drive 51 minutes south. Now, Barry says he's up in Broomfield, Colorado. He says he went there on business that morning, May 10th, 2020, about a 3-hour drive from Morphew's home. And it's about a 3.5-hour drive from Moffett, where the remains were discovered. So, you know, you do the math on all of that and you try to figure out what happened. But if he's going down to Moffett, Colorado, as we heard in the prior segment, they have no evidence of him necessarily being down there. Did he have help? Is he not responsible? Is there a serial killer? What is going on? Will Barry be charged now? Will he be charged again now that they have the remains? Does that make the prosecution's case better or worse against him? Let's bring in our think tank tonight. Joining us, criminal defense attorney in Atlanta, Georgia, Eklund Mercy. Phoenix, Arizona, the attorney who represented Jodi Arias, hates her, Kirk Nurmi, and deputy public defender for LA County. That's still Eklund. There, Philip Dubé. All right, great to see everyone tonight. Eklund Mercy, these developments, now that Suzanne Morphew's remains have been recovered and where they were recovered, putting all these pieces together, does this make the prosecutor's case stronger or weaker right now? And do you expect Barry Morphew to be charged again?
Just based on what I heard, I think they need more. It's so separate. It's so far away. There's 3 years. There was another case. It was found for another case. There's a potential serial killer. Although he may look like the prime suspect, there is no statute of limitations for murder. And I think that the prosecution, if this is all they have, they need more. They're going to have a problem. So I think that there's a lot of answers. There's a lot of questions that need answers, and they don't have it as of right now.
So, Kirk Nurmi, generally speaking, right? Generally speaking, in cases where there's an obvious suspect and someone that investigators are looking at or prosecutors are looking at, and the body has not been found. Once the body's found, it's usually pretty quick. All right, we recovered the body. Now we make the arrest. How about in this case? What do you expect? What does this this discovery of this significant evidence and the location, et cetera, what does it do for the investigation, the case, as it pertains to Barry Morphew, who obviously was a suspect? He was charged with her murder.
Well, I think it makes the case a lot more difficult to prove unless there's something at that crime scene that indicates that he was involved. You know, we're talking about 3 years of exposure. I don't think there's probably going to be any DNA. It's possible retention in clothing. I really doubt it. So the question, and we think about this, Vinny, when they made this arrest in May of 21, they charged him. Think about the probable cause statement that led to the arrest, the indictment, all the pleadings, everything else was probably based on a different theory, right? And now that theory's blown out of the water because the body's somewhere else, he's demonstrably not. And you do, as Eklund said, have the potential of somebody who's going around killing women randomly, and that could very well be a possibility. So, you know, all those things, I could see the defense really playing into that, saying confirmation bias. They just made the assumption that he is the most likely person to do it. Granted, there's some suspicious behavior, but he's the most likely person to have done it, so we're going to arrest him. Now, that's just blown out of the water with facts, and facts are stubborn things, Vinny, and the state is going to have a tough time making this case with these facts that come out now.
All right, Philip Dubé, we've got the new developments, where she is found, where it is in relation to their home and to where he was, and he was on video that day. Her last communication to anyone is a bikini selfie to her lover the day before. Her bicycle is found nearby, then the helmet is found less than a mile away. Put those pieces together for me. What does it mean?
Well, first of all, I think you've left out some key pieces. No, first of all, she's not June Cleaver. You know, she's not the Carol Brady, Mother Teresa, Mother of the Year kind of gal. Remember, her 2 kids are away at sleepaway camp. They're expecting the kids back later in the day for Mother's Day. So dad takes the morning off to go to a job site. So it explains why they're not together during the day on Mother's Day. So what does she do? She goes off on her own frolic. Well, what we need to know from the coroner.
What do you mean she goes off on her own
homicide?
frolic? What does that mean, Philip? She goes off on her frolic.
Because, in other words, she got on her bike, took a ride somewhere, and in other words, not necessarily in disregard of Mother's Day, but she went off, did her own thing because the kids weren't home, the husband wasn't home, and they were going to celebrate Mother's Day later in the day after her teenage daughters come home. But what's key here is the reason why the case was dismissed is because the prosecution withheld Brady evidence, exculpatory evidence. They found DNA on the glove box that matched an unknown male donor whose DNA was also came up in 3 unsolved rapes. So no matter what happens here, if you don't have anything forensically tying the husband to her remains, what you do have is DNA basically from a serial rapist in her SUV on the glove box. I don't think the case changes. If anything, by finding the body, it could actually make it worse for the prosecution.
Against Barry Morphew. Okay. So what do you think happened here, Eklund? What do you think could have happened here? Do you think the bicycle is more likely she went for a ride, or more likely that it was staged by whoever the killer was? You know, you've got, as Philip rightfully pointed out, you've got this male donor DNA in her glove box, but she's out on her bike. Like, how do those two things make sense together either?
Well, her being on her bike on Mother's Day is not out of the ordinary. If you talk to most mothers on Mother's Day, they want to be far away from their spouses and their children. That is the gift. That's the gift.
That's some
Space
space
is
is
the
the
gift.
gift. Gotcha.
So with that being said, so with her driving, with her taking her bike, that's not out of the ordinary. She wants to have space. But the problem is we have a lover, we have DNA from rapists, we have other murderers, other missing people, and we have bodies. This is convoluted as hell. And it just seems pretty lazy, on investigators, and to just leave it at that. Just putting all of that work on the jury instead of the prosecution. The prosecution should have a theory. I don't see a theory. I see, trash cans, and he goes to trash cans. That doesn't hold up the case. With all their resources, with all their burden, they need more.
We will continue to follow it. We'll be talking about this in the days to come. To me, I agree, I think, with all of you. This makes it much more complicated for prosecutors to put the pieces together. And I'm interested about this other missing woman in Colorado that they were investigating in that area.
I am interested in that as well. So I'm going to stick on this, of course, obviously. We do have some other cases that we'll be doing updates on. So I'll go through those updates really quick. So tomorrow, I'm thinking tomorrow. So maybe I'll put up another community post and we'll let you guys take a vote. But we were watching the house, or the fall of the House of Murdaugh. Well, they were only supposed to do a 3-part series to that whole documentary that was on Fox Nation. Well, they came out with a 4th episode. So I was like, because it's over him wanting a new trial. So they're going to be going and doing a documentary on that portion of it now. So I guess we'll be living with Alec Murdaugh in our true crime genre here for a little while longer, because he keeps getting in more and more trouble. Then on Saturday, I was going to do the Idaho podcast. There's like 2 that we need to get caught up on. So I was going to play those for you guys. And then we still have Crystal Rogers. There was an arrest in her murder. I usually have everything written down, but I don't today. And there's a ton of other cases that we're following. Delphi, of course. We're following Delphi. If anything new comes out in that case, I'll be sure to report to you guys. We did do a live earlier today over the Delphi case. So if you guys want to go back and watch that, you can. We did read over the whole defense document over the last few lives. I went to Delphi. So I went to the Monon High Trail and I took some video and pictures, and they're in with the lives as well. So there's a few things that we have going on. And I know that there's more. I just can't think of them on the top of my head right now. So let's see. I think that might be most of them that we're covering. Rachel Morin, we did a little update on her case last night as well. Rex Heuermann, we're covering the Long Island serial killer as well on this channel. So any updates, I'll be sure to get them to you guys. I may do another day live tomorrow and then come back evening live. Maybe we'll cover Crystal Rogers during the day. But if we do, it's usually around 4:15 p.m. And then I usually do my lives around 8:15 p.m. normally, but we've been doing them at 9:15 the last few nights because of the day lives that we've been doing. So thank you guys so much for being here tonight. If you guys don't mind just taking a second to hitting the like button, it really does help my channel grow. I know you guys hear that from every channel, but it does work. Nancy's watching you, so you don't want to get on Nancy's bad side. But thank you guys so much for being here tonight. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We did hit 12,000 Titans today. Oh my gosh, 12,000. Wow. You have to think of it like if you're filling up a stadium. You can't think of it as a number. You got to think of it as a people. That's what I was trying to do. That's amazing. Thank you guys so much. I love you guys. I'll see you guys all tomorrow. Bye, guys.